What's going on, boys? Thanks to our patrons and Fiverr customers, subscribe to our Patreon free for behind the scenes stuff, arm yourselves, life stuff. I watched a North O2 video about violent cave art, and in the video he talked about what prehistoric people fought over. And according to them, group to group conflict was rather rare. Instead, people mostly fought and killed within their own groups. And it's not like these groups were huge, and it's not like these groups could spare bodies. And that speaks to the way humans do violence, compared against all other species, except maybe chimps. Humans are so emotionally driven, we will risk our survival if it means getting to fuck up somebody who has fucked with us. And I'm usually on the side of self-interest controlling everybody at our basest levels. Civilizations are chains of shit getting turned into other shit, getting turned into other shit in the name of self-interest. But it's easy to discount how important our emotional states are to us. Anger in particular. On the anger front, we're the same now as we were tens of thousands of years ago, probably hundreds of thousands of years ago. And as with dreams and other self-knowledge stuff we still haven't figured out, anger is a big one of those. And with what's going on in the United States right now, I wasn't even aware of it or really aware of it until today. And also something I've been paying attention to, the state of schooling. I thought it was mostly in the United States, but it's sounding like this is a problem everywhere. Right now, anger, aggression, violence is at the wheel. And you speak with older people, and they say, it used not to be this bad. And before I was inclined not to believe them, but now I do. That anger, the anger we've always had, has always been there, but I don't think it's had as much room to flare up until recently. And when I say recently, I mean in the last 20-25 years. And I connect that mostly with the popularization of the internet. And I'm beginning to look at anger as a plant that grows in meme soil. As in, every person has that human anger and aggression in them, but when not exposed to it, it's less likely to sprout and blossom the way it seems to have in the last 2 decades. So people who grow up in violent, aggressive areas, exposed to those violent memes early and constantly, way more likely for that aggression to take over. But someone else not as exposed to it, getting them to that point would take a lot longer, take a lot more. But what the internet has done is spread, or make it possible to spread, these aggressive memes to everyone at all times. You might not be exposed to actual violence, but in your brain, through the internet, you are inundated with aggression constantly. And I think aggression, violence, disrespect, anything that could get someone to that aggressive level is like a red cape to a bull. But instead of it being a physical trigger, it is a mimetic one. And for some reason, probably survival of the fittest, we're drawn to aggression so we can be aggressive, so we can be angry. Something in us wants us to be aggressive and angry if there is cause to be aggressive and angry. Except with the internet, the causes aren't. The causes we see on the internet shouldn't warrant the same level of response as if we'd seen some cause in person or been exposed to it in person, but it does. It's like Postal 1, the anger virus. And everyone is contributing to angering everyone else, and the fire rises until it's so overwhelming you are not allowed to be anything but angry and aggressive and then violent. It's so pervasive, even if you unplug totally, as long as you are still participating in society, you can't get away from people, and everyone is angry now. They're plugged in, and then they take that aggression that's been set off in them by the internet into the real world. Nobody can escape, unless you go live in the middle of nowhere, live off the land. But what's the point of that? I still think you could go out into the wilderness and live off the land if you practiced and did all this stuff and live a relatively peaceful life, peace of mind. I mean, you're fighting with nature, but it's not humanity. But what other game is there really? Even if some huge catastrophe set us all back, our descendants would arrive back right where we are right now eventually. This is the objective. The fact we can't escape it, have never been able to escape it, makes me think we need to figure out what to do about it. But that's difficult because what can you do about it? You need to figure out how to resolve something that can't be resolved, or at least doesn't want to be resolved. Because this parasite is so strong and so controlling, it pilots its hosts and crashes them into one another before they can figure out what to do. It's like gasoline trying to figure out how not to burn in the presence of a match. But something hit me today. You watch those videos I mentioned about teachers discussing why they're quitting, and the climate of young students these days. People thought Zoomers and their relationship with the internet was bad. Gen Alpha was raised totally on the internet in its worst, most aggressive form. Each generation has handed down the worst lessons possible. And you can see this in how fucking retarded boomers and Gen X are. They act like things used to be better, but they've done nothing but contribute to making things worse. And now millennials are doing it, and now Zoomers are starting to do it. We posture as this, or these, kindly, wise people, but all we do is encourage, and not just as in saying you should do this, but actively, infrastructure, brain, meme infrastructure, the internet. We encourage each successive generation, or the worst aspect of humanity in each successive generation. We say, be a good person, look for the good in things, do good to people, help people, while doing none of that ourselves and holding each generation's head under the technological water and drowning them in anger juice. They never had a chance. I mean, we never had a chance either, but all we've done is make it worse. And I realized we can't keep this up. Something will break. Maybe not in our lifetimes, which is odd to say, but if the state of children is what it is, wherever there's high technology, then something will happen and will break down. And this idea isn't new at all, but watching news coverage today, it finally hit me. There's no way out on a bigger picture level. This is what will happen. We'll do on a large scale what our ancestors did in camps tens of thousands of years ago. we'll get so angry we will destroy ourselves to satisfy that emotion for some unknown natural selection reason. And that's one of the things about natural selection that's been confusing me. We haven't been talking about mysticism much lately, and I think it's because I'm just dying. If natural selection is, well, a few ways to look at it, either to spread your genes or just the course of a thing moving, continuing to move or not continuing to move, that works on lower sentience levels. But once you reach the point you're aware of this, and we are aware of this, you'd think we'd pivot as a species toward either spreading our genes or continuing to exist. At this level, neither of those things should be that hard. Yet, we are obsessed with destroying our enemies for emotional reasons that spit in the face of natural selection the way we think about it. There is something unnatural about sentience. There's something in the fact we have the capacity to rise above our baser, more primal nature, and we don't. Your sentience, your ego, is not the thing at the wheel. But this got me thinking about what you can do. Maybe we're put in this situation as a species, or we put ourselves in this situation as a species, so we're forced to figure out a solution to this flaw within us, even if it doesn't get adopted immediately, or ever. Because again, I'm watching this news coverage, and I live in a hyper-political area, nobody shuts up about it, and it's confusing because I'm a naturally hateful, angry, spiteful, bitter, resentful person, and I still hate the way people try to force you to join the choir of people getting angry to the point they'll do things harmful to themselves and others, stupid level of aggression over nothing that has anything to do with what you are or should be concerned with. If you want to be hateful and angry, you don't need other people to do that. There is plenty to be angry at and hateful of in your own life. And those are your things. This isn't some collective anger and hate. It's your anger. It's your hate. And I think that might be one way to combat this, at least in the short term. Your anger and your hatred. Because I think there's almost a drug aspect to this. The transmitters or the connectors or whatever they are. If you get yourself hooked on your own anger and hatred, then your triggers will be very specific to you. Once again, you can be pushed to that point, but it's harder because, one, not everybody knows what makes you angry, what sets you off, what makes you hate them. And also, people are not targeting your anger, hatred receptors specifically. Versus if you get involved in this huge group anger and aggression and hatred thing, your triggers or your receptors get trained to get super angry at what everyone else around you is getting super angry at. And because of the internet, because of all these constant conflicts, you are exposed to exactly the things that will make you most angry. You know, it's like eating the fish on Airplane, the movie Airplane. If you had the fish or the steak, then you're fucked because, well, actually, I haven't watched Airplane in a long time. I think only the fish is fucked up. But let's say they're both fucked up. You're done. But who was okay? The guy who had the lasagna, and that wasn't even an option, or supposed to be an option. I think one solution is becoming a hate vegan. All organic, all natural hatred and anger, grown locally in your soul. That way, you aren't running from what you are refining what you are in a way you are less able to be controlled, at least so easily. But then people are always trying to force you to be angry at what they're angry at. It's like what dare officers said people would do to you with marijuana. Someone's going to walk up to you with weed and put a gun to your head and force you to use it. That's something that's starting to get me angry, that it's so hard to escape. Something that's beginning to get me very angry and hateful is the way people of all different political or social persuasions will come up on you and tell you about some thing happening somewhere else and expecting you to get angry, and then when you don't get angry, maybe you care or maybe you think this or that about it, but specifically you don't get angry the way they're angry. Now they get angry at you and aggressive with you. But anyway, they always use a moral argument here. They'll cite you the ugliest, worst, most one sided example of something, one drop in an ocean, and then use that two ways, either to try to force you to be angry with them or to use it as an excuse to be angry at you. Because if you aren't angry at it the way they are, then you must be the enemy. And you can know this is a tactic and it'll still be somewhat effective. And that little bit of effectiveness is all they need. That moment of hesitation or second guessing. Because if there is any room in you to think, at least in, even if it's just in this particular example, they might have a point, they'll use that to try to force you onto their side or to put you into a fight starting on the back foot because you hesitated, because you actually considered what they had to say even though you know you shouldn't, or they're being cheap, let's say. And to deal with this, I have two ideas. Either you destroy your sense of morality totally, or you adopt some different morality. Because I think for the most part, we are riffing on Abrahamic morality or forms of it. And then we assume that's all there is or that's all there can be. Barring a limited number of intense basics like the anger thing, I think there's a lot more room to be morally different or outside than we think there is. Now, what do you accomplish by destroying your sense of all your sense of morality? Now, I don't know if that's possible. I don't think that's possible even. But what do you accomplish with that? You lose a vulnerability someone could use either to manipulate you or to make you pause so they can beat you easier. But the issue with having no morality whatsoever is it seems like you'd be somewhat shielded, but you'd still be unarmed. And you need to be armed to deal with these people. And I don't mean losing your mind and trying to oppose them in some grand way. I mean, you need a lead pipe to navigate this shit to keep yourself safe and on track. If you manage to have no morality and somebody attacks you, they might not be able to pull their bullshit on you, but you don't have an anchor or a rock to stand on. That, or no morality, won't frighten them away or give them pause or give you resources, mental resources to do something about them, to defend yourself. And if we're looking at this as if we are in this situation as a species, so we're forced to figure something out, then no morality means you haven't really figured anything out. Or you're stagnating. You aren't moving in an evolving direction. So then we get into alternative moralities. And I'm keying into strictly accomplishment or power as morality. And I think either of those, would be good moralities. If your goal is to avoid the anger virus while also elevating yourself and trying to come up with different solutions. What to you is good? This brings us back to that Saint O'Neill saying, what's good is good if it's good for me. And that makes everything very simple, especially if what you are restricting what's good for you to as power or resources. Because then it's not just an ethic or a morality. You have receipts for your accomplishments, and you can use them to do more. You can use them to defend yourself, not strictly on an ideological level or a moral level. Sometimes I think about hyper political people and what their lives must look like. And it's not that hard, because when I was a teenager, I was one of them. You waste so much time fighting over things that ultimately you have no control over, that won't improve or fuck up your life. And even let's say this is a topic that is very important to you, that could make or break your life, you still don't have any power over it. And if the power to determine your fate is what you're concerned with, then why are you dumping all of this time and energy into a hole that is guaranteed not to do anything about it, when you could be spending that time focusing on things that would help you determine your fate, make your life better, or prevent it from getting any worse? When accomplishment or power is your morality, when some deranged person sticks their phone in your face and shows you a fucked up video and says, aren't you concerned with what's happening in this place? You don't even need to think about it unless you want to, because you've accomplished what you're here to accomplish, and because you've accomplished it, you have the resources either to pay someone to fuck them up or to have them fucked up. Traditional moral concerns do nothing for you. They don't do anything for anyone. People act so concerned with them, but nobody abides them. Maybe you do a few good things here or there to feel good about yourself, and then nothing. It meant nothing. You get terrorized, or you terrorize somebody else, and then everybody is terrorizing everybody. Let's say you want to be moral anyway. Do you intend to bring about your just, righteous, moral world by throwing in with shitty people, infected people? If you want to do good, then you're right here with us anyway. You won't do any good by talking about doing good or hoping for good. You have to grab it and force it. But if you really care about good, then you're best off abandoning that idea of good anyway, because if it's good for you, then it probably isn't good for somebody else. The best way to be moral is to divorce yourself from morality. Unless, of course, you think what's good for you is good for everybody, but then you're right back here with us again anyway, because you won't bring about your morality without resources and power and force. And then you think about, it's all tying together again, you think about the Old Testament, you think about Yahweh, the demiurge, and what that creature is, and it really makes perfect sense. We are created in our Creator's image, and it's ugly. But for now, this time, I think that covers it. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.